Okay. It'll be fine. We can manage. Can I have it in my hand, though? Oh, I got to stay right here. Oh, okay. Hang on, we're still looping. Okay, that's better. Pull some cord. I hate standing there. So, how are you guys doing? Good. Are any con good? It's been fun? Yeah, it seems like it was fun. I had to sit out there at that table all the time, but I did get to harass people in interviews and hacker trivia. So if you haven't come by and done an interview with the booth that Security Weekly do, or if you want to enroll in school, you can come by the other booth on the other side. So we have all those things and more. And they have shot glasses if you do interviews, or you win hacker movie trivia. So it's got people won too. I was like, somebody knew like Angelina Jolie's shoe size yesterday. I was like, wow, you pay way too much attention to this. But this is people that are freezing frames on the Blu-ray. Like, well, let me get my calipers out. So I'm Doug White. I work at Roger Williams University. I'm the chair of the Cybersecurity department. This is Russ. You want to tell them who you are?
My name is Russ Beauchemin. I'm the program director for cybersecurity at our Providence campus. So Doug and I work pretty close together, and we're good friends. We travel the world.
That's true. We get in all kinds of trouble in foreign cities and things like that. So I want to do a session. They told me a lot of people coming to this. We're starting to get into the cybersecurity field. Obviously, some of you have been there. I've been working in this field since 1977. So my first job was when I was 14. I wanted to be a guitar player, and I foolishly told my dad I needed a job, and I was hoping he would say, "I'll get you a job as the guitarist for the Rolling Stones," because you have that kind of naive thing when you're like 13. And my dad was like, "I'll get you a job at the muffler factory." I was like, oh, that doesn't sound good. But I went down there, and they had this whole room full of these old-time engineer guys in, like, white shirts and black ties and horn-rimmed glasses, and they were like, what do you want? And I was like, I like the computers, and they taught me how to write Fortran 2 code, so I've been involved in this for a long, long time, and a lot of people now are trying to get into this field, and so we were talking about we called this session "So You Want to Be a Hack-Zor," because people post that all the time. If you've never been on like Alt 2600 or something like that, you'll see these like people post things like, hopefully none of you have ever posted any such awful thing as that. And usually what happens to people who post things like that is what?
They get tagged.
Yeah, they get told, download this toolkit and it'll have everything you need to know. Which is usually just like a, Python script that erases your hard drive or something like that. But it's like, type this, like learn to hack. And I see those guys all the time. Some of them are just trying to be ironic too. But so we wanted to talk a little bit about ways people could get into the field, let you ask questions if you have them, because that's something I've been doing for a while. I think I may be taking credit like Al Gore or something for creating the internet, but I think I had the first cybersecurity, it wasn't called that, cybersecurity degree program in the United States back in 1999. So if anybody can beat that, bring it on. At the University of Northern Colorado, we built a program that was called hacking. And that didn't go over real well with the state, but and then some of the students got indicted, and there was that. Yeah, it was that whole part we don't talk about too much anymore. But although it could have actually been a pretty glowing, like we could have put it in our materials if we just handled it right, and some of our students have even been already indicted by the FBI. But I was like, no, that's not good because they actually got caught. So it would be like if our other students broke them out, it would be, yeah. So we were going to call this ethics, but then they told us it wasn't a good idea. So here's my first set of skills. And people always ask me, what should I learn if I want to get involved in this? And two of the things that I always tell people that they should learn, and some of my students are sitting here, and do I like binary and hex? Yes, I do. And I love it more than life itself. And I really think that people that are working this field should, this is easy stuff to learn, right? It's very simple. And if you have the basis for this, you already have a lot of understanding of some things that are going to keep coming up over and over and over again, whatever you're doing in the security profession, because whether it's understanding how subnetting works, or it's understanding how some piece of code segment works that's got buffers that are being stored in hex, or codes or ASCII codes or any of these things that people are doing, it all ends up back here. So I always, they knew he was never going to get to talk, right? And he's so polite. I'm the rude one. But so that was two of my stories. Does anybody have a comment on this? I mean, you're welcome to comment or ask questions too. It's not formal. I mean, I would have worn my tux or something. No comments on that. Everybody knows binary and hex already, so like that. Yeah, my license plate's in hex. So it's kind of stupid hex because Rhode Island has some like real serious problems with weird stuff. Like I wanted to put FFFF on my license plate and they rejected it as being obscene. I was like, what? and I'd seen like really obscene license plates, but they wouldn't let me do that. So yeah, that's the state of Rhode Island's like that. No comment. Okay. You have any comment? No. Okay. Nobody. Okay. That one was boring. All right. Okay, here's a better one. How about code? So we can all write code, right? Yeah. What's your favorite language? Ruby. Yeah. Python. Good answers. I didn't put Ruby on. I'm sorry. I should have put Ruby on there. Yeah. I just did a whole bunch of Ruby on Rails and stuff for my cybersecurity programming class. We do Ruby, we do Python, all kinds of stuff. Ruby and Python. So I like those two. I should have put Ruby on there. What about you, Russ? You like? You have to talk to the microphone. Ruby was probably the one that I missed last night. Oh yeah, that was probably true. Yeah, we went to the German beer hall and they had these giant, like boots full of beer, and then it's like, let's make slides. No, we didn't really do that. No, of course not. I like C++. I mean, I've been a C programmer since really C came out in the late 70s, and I started working with it. It was the first thing I learned to convert away from Fortran. So I was doing Fortran code, and when we started converting, I learned that. I like C because C is the basis of so many things. I mean, it's really going to be tough for you to work in like Unix-based systems if you don't know some pieces of C. I mean, I know Python and Ruby and all these things are great, but C is still there, and a lot of apps and a lot of code is written if you're compiling things in Unix. And remember, we're talking about like hacking things, and we're talking about breaking into things that are white hat only, but we're talking about it from that perspective. And a lot of it's going to end up being able to look at C code. How does it behave? What is it doing? Because a lot of hacks start with those apps. So that's where you're going to dig in and you're going to start looking at those pieces of code. Malware, guess where? It's all written in C. It can be written in Python. It can be written in Ruby. It can be written in all kinds of things. But if you understand C, that's a great place to start. What about, I didn't hear anybody say Java. Yeah. So I don't like Java. So if you like Java, I'm sorry. I know that you like it, but it's just, I don't like it. What about assembler? No takers on that. I used to teach assemblers, so that's how long I've been doing this. So it was like, I originally was teaching a graphics course for like people that were wanting to learn. It was called Introduction to Game Programming, back when game programming was, a manly profession. It was like, now you get to use your license and use the Unreal Engine, and it's just like, make him wave his arm. Wow, look at that. Then this was back when the students would sign up I was telling those guys yesterday, you had to sign up for the class, and they were like, I want to make a goblin that's got chainsaws for arms. And you're like, okay, that's cool. How about we make a sphere that attacks people by rolling around a flat plane first? And they were like, well, that sounds boring. I'm like, code it and then come back and we'll work on the goblin part. Then they drop. They're like, I'm changing my major to marketing. Then I can just draw goblins in a flip book. I'm like, okay, yeah, you could do that too. How about scripting languages? Yeah? What's your favorite? Python? Ruby, okay, yeah, those are really scripting languages. So, yeah, you guys were kind of cheating a little bit when I said programming languages. JavaScript. Hackers like JavaScript a lot, right? Yeah, because JavaScript has a lot of problems and a lot of holes, and there's a lot of people who use it because it's simple. Kind of like HTML. A lot of people use these things, and guess what they don't know? Much. They took that little 30-second course online that said, how do you make a web page? And that's cool. And they built a web page with a monkey on it that was like, hi, I'll be right back. And then 2 years later, that web page has got a login on it. that's now punching into a database, and like they didn't really tell anybody that the database they're punching into is like the database of all sex offenders everywhere, but they were using, you know, a table in it, and yeah, you know how that kind of stuff develops. We know what SQL injection is. Everybody in the room knows that. Okay, so you have SQL injections that are coming up. A lot of times they came up because people had no idea what they were doing, right? And as these things evolved, somebody went out, they grabbed a book called HTML for Dummies, and I mean real dummies. And they sat down and they built a website, which initially was static. We've all been there, right? We built a static website. 2 years later, an intern, we blame the interns, of course. Our students, you can always blame students. Like, you guys are ready to take the fall, right? I told them when they came up here, I said, anything goes wrong, I go out the exit and you guys stand there and go, it was me, man. What, Russ? You're
I'm here for moral support.
He's going to keep me out of trouble. How about Oxed? This guy, I like you. Oxed, if you aren't familiar with it, Oxed's a very powerful scripting tool that allows you to do a lot of different mods to things at the command line level with scripting. So it's a good one to learn. If you're trying to learn, it's a good one for hacking because you can do all kinds of tricks with it. And just kind of course, again, most everybody comes back to Python because Python can do pretty much all these tricks, or Ruby can do all these tricks as well. And all these scripting languages, everybody knows what I mean by scripting versus programming, right? So the non-compiled versus compiled languages. Okay, I mean, I don't know where you guys are, so I don't want to be insulting, but you know, I guess when people started saying Ruby from the audience, I should have upped the game a little bit. It's when the people are going, visualbasic.net. Maverick Basic. Yeah, well, we all like to see people that wrote code in that. How about networking? Okay, so we'll switch it up then. How do you think networking is a pretty important skill? I do. To me, I don't see how you can be a programmer today or an applications developer if you don't understand TCP/IP networking. Because are you going to actually write a piece of software that's not got a network stack attached to it at this point in time? If so, what is it going to do? Like Solitaire 5? I mean, think about that. So what? So we all know TCP, right? I mean, how well? I mean, do you know it at like the packetize level? Like, so you can do the packet. I mean, this is the hacking thing where you get down to the bits in the packet, like the different fields. Like, you look at layer 2, the layer 2 packet map. Here's a test then. How did the ping of death work? I tell you, if somebody anybody want to explain it? Oh, back there in the back. Oh, she had her hand first. I'm sorry. So you go ahead. Yeah, I think she's right. I'll come to the booth. I'll give you something. What were you going to say, though? I'll take your answer, too. I'll give you something, too, because both answers are correct. The ping of death, really what they did was they set any ping packet, an ICMP packet, has a size field. So you can define the data payload size of a ping. If you didn't know that, you can actually set a switch to tell it, I want a packet of this size or this size or this size. And guess how many bits there are in that flag? 8. So what's the biggest data payload you can put? It's what? Well, it depends on those old packets back then, though. If it's an 8-bit field, 255. Ooh. So guess what? What's the hacker mentality on that? Set it to 256. Like, I mean, come on. Because it was actually at the command line, so it wasn't in binary, so you could actually specify the switch at the command line and put 256 instead of 8 or something. And so somebody put 256 and it brought the whole world down. It was amazing because Cisco equipment couldn't deal with it. When Cisco equipment got a malformed packet that had a malformed field like that was 9 bits instead of 8 bits, it just barbecued everything. Our stuff just all went down. And we would bring our stuff back up, and all these pings of death are bouncing around all over the place. And the minute we would bring the routers back up, they would just choke and die. And it's like, and we didn't know what was going on because they wouldn't even stay up long enough to figure it out. And until Cisco released a patch, the iOS, it was just like, you're screwed. Sorry. Because, every time that we got it all straightened out, guess what happened? Some 12-year-old went, oh, or 36-year-old or whatever. Ping. I'm going to try it, man. Go ahead. Do it. All right. How about layer 2 networking? Important. What are we doing at layer 2? More packets, MAC addresses. One of the first things I ever learned about TCP/IP to hack was to get around MAC address restrictions. Because who was doing that to us? Some of you here today probably. Cable, the broadband providers, right? The people that brought stuff to my house. I had this broadband connection at my house. Here these guys show up, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get a connection. Because I'd been using dial-up. Like America Online. 48K. And they show up, and they're like, you're gonna have 56K broadband. I'm like, oh my God. I could download porn faster than ever before. But when they did that, they came to my house, and the guy came in the house to put this like modem in my house. And I had already rigged all this stuff up. So I had like Cisco 2621 routers sitting on a table there beside where they were going to put this in. And we had computers all over our house, and there was like Cat5 hanging from the ceilings. And there was also Twinix hanging from the ceiling because I'd done this little project with IBM Twinix that my wife didn't like much, but she went out of town and came back, and she was like, what is this? Like a milking barn or something? And if you've ever seen Twinix, it looks like a milking machine, but it will survive the nuclear holocaust. And the first thing I ever had to do with TCP/IP like this was figure out how MAC addressing worked, because I had not worked with TCP/IP when this happened. I had been working with IPX/SPX. And the guy said, well, you can't connect more than one computer to this. And I was like, what? And he was like, oh, you have to pay for each connection, and I have to put in a drop, and each connection's $9.95 a month plus another drop. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to use one computer. And the guy was like, well, you do understand that we have to know if you plug a second computer in there, it won't work. I was like, okay, I'm only going to use a single computer. All this other equipment is for a secret project that doesn't involve the internet, and I can't tell you about it. And he's like, oh, okay. Okay, then. I guess that's okay. And so the minute he left, I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. So it's like I connected the computer. They let me connect to it. I'm immediately like, I'm going to look at the stack, and I want to see how this thing works. And I I'm like, oh, it's TCP/IP. I wonder where I can get the spec for that. So I called her to school, called the engineering department, said, you guys got a spec, an IEEE on this thing? Oh, yeah, we got it in the library. Went and got the spec, came back, was like, ooh, look at this. And it took me about a day, and I figured out that they were restricting it based on a 48-bit MAC address. And that's what they were doing. So then all I had to do was spoof the MAC on one of my Cisco routers, which was easy enough to do, and plug it in. And now I got a Cisco router. And I was like, oh, we'll just NAT the rest of it. And then I get this notice from them going, your bandwidth usage is unusual. That didn't even get into the time when I had a Yagi on my roof in Colorado, and I was selling broadband to my neighbors over like a illegal Wi-Fi in my neighborhood, because they were trying to sell them all like network connections for like $90 to install it and $18 a month. And I was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a bunch of bandwidth because it was cheaper if you bought it in bulk. And I'll just put a big Yagi on my roof, go to their house, put a Yagi on their gutter, and run it inside, and I can just send them. They found out about it. And it was like, cable people were like, what is this crap? Like, it's a secret system for monitoring the government watching you. They have these satellite. Huh? A Yagi is an antenna, like a homemade antenna. So we were building, there's a lot of projects about, there was a thing called Yagi Project. They were building homemade antennas out of Dinty Moore beef stew cans. It was like the winner for like the best, directional signal. And I had built one. I'm sorry, go ahead. Pringles can ones, coffee cans, and they had a big contest on the internet for who could build the best like high gain antenna out of like, stuff you got at a grocery store. So it was a pretty interesting. You can find that stuff on the internet too if you still want to build your own antennas. I was building them for a while because Cisco made one that you could. I was shooting my office for my house, and Cisco made this like high gain antenna that you could You could actually turn up the gain on it till it was like cook birds and things as they flew through the signal. And I started getting a little nervous about it because, my kid's up there in the house, and I'm like, my daughter seems kind of like funny sometimes, when I'm like watching TV on the internet, it's like, and my wife's like, yeah, I feel all fizzy or something. I'm like, yeah, it won't hurt you too much. You're only getting like the same amount of rads as like, say, 20 chest x-rays a day. So it's pretty good, actually. They all have that stuff cured by the time it all comes home to roost. But I ended up building some Yagis for mine so I could hit my house with better antennas that had very focused, directional. Of course, later, people started selling these things. They were so expensive, and you could build your own out of just stuff you could literally buy at like Home Depot and the grocery store. So like go buy some coax and go buy, don't eat. I'm going to give you a warning. Okay, if you take nothing else away from this conference, I'm going to give you the one warning that you really, really need to survive in life. Don't eat the Dinty Moore beef stew that comes out of the can. Just pour that out. Even my cats wouldn't eat that. I was like, what? It was. Oh, so yeah. Well, now I know in the future if I want to make Yagis, I'll call Russ, and he's like, "Hey, man, guess what? I got a whole cooler full of Dinty Moore beef stew I dumped out of tins." Yeah. I mean, all this stuff comes back into hacking too, because all these things were about what hackers were doing. I mean, if you went to early DEF CONs, you saw all this stuff. People were making antennas to hack the hotel, to hack the law enforcement vehicle sitting in the parking lot. And all those kind of skill sets started coming back around. And one of the problems and challenges you guys have is in some ways it's too easy. I mean, I know that sounds a little bit like that. You kids today. In my day, we built our own Yagis. That's right. We hung them in trees. Yeah. Today, you can go buy something at Best Buy. And because you can do that, it's easier, but you also don't have to understand it. And that can make things a shortcut thing. And one of the biggest keys to hacking stuff, and I'm talking about white hat anyway, but even then, is understanding the underlying principles of things, because that's where almost every hack comes from. I mean, yeah, there's zero-day exploits, which means Microsoft screwed up and they should have blocked this, but they didn't. But all these really elaborate hacks come from understanding the underlying principles of how things work. And that's where we're talking about low-level things like assembler, and we're talking about Python and operating systems. Like a lot of students now don't take operating systems class. The NSA just put that back in their curriculum to make people take some operating system stuff, because used to, when you majored in computer science, one of the courses was called operating systems. And you had to write an operating system. We all took the class. We all hated it. We all wish we were dead. I know I did. It was a really awful class. I can still tell you the name of the guy who taught the class. His name was Dr. Heller. And I did not like Dr. Heller. But when I had to code that, I spent all those days coding that operating system. And then he went, wow, this sucks. Wow, I'm embarrassed for you. He's like, but it's got those features. And he's like, oh, I guess, if you want to call them features. I call them liabilities. But see where I learned all this crap? But I learned a lot about how operating systems work by suffering through that. And a lot of times today you'll see programs that don't require operating systems. And it's a challenge to jam everything in there too. But these two, which are the primary ones that are out there, I know there's Mac. I know everybody out there with their Mac going, oh, Doug, you didn't say Mac. Give me a ball bat. Russ, you want to say? I know he is. And there's a lot of Mac users in the world, but they've never seemed to really be the type. Maybe it's because their operating systems are pretty solid. But I'll, of course, guess what's Mac based on? It's based on Unix. So, if you delete the graphics and go to the command line, guess what you're dealing with? Unix again. So one of the, and I, if nothing else, if you want to be involved in all this, you need to know Linux, Unix. I got to tell you, you guys agree? You had yeah, everybody's shaking their head, of course. And one of the reasons is if you want to build something yourself, you want to build an attack platform, you want to build anything, building it in Unix, Linux means it's all open source. It means you can get stuff for it. You can roll your own. You have full access to the stack. You have full access to all kinds of pieces of it. And understanding it at that level, you could literally redo the kernel on Linux and build your own. Right? You could take the kernel. That was the whole idea. That's where Linux came from. It was all based on BSD Unix, which was open source from Berkeley, and they released it, and people like Linus Torvalds took it, rewrote the kernel, rebuilt it, and released it as their own thing, and then later started selling it like a jerk. Actually, Linus didn't do that, but, well, I don't know. Maybe he did. I don't know. Who did Red Hat? I mean, did he actually do that, or was he out by then? We don't know. But maybe you can get rich doing it. Yeah, probably not. It's already been done. But the next one, Synix, or whatever you want to call it, because Dynex. That's if I'll put my initial on it. So Dynex. But Windows is also important. Why? Yeah, I mean everybody. I mean, and guess what? If you're looking at pen testing, so we'll be the white hats. Who are your targets typically? They're going to be Windows boxes sitting on people's desktops in the marketing department, right? I mean, when we used to do, I mean, my company used to do pen tests, I'm sitting in the rental car across in the parking lot, and I'm not seeing any Linux boxes. I'm targeting all your Windows boxes and, Windows servers. And what did we all know about WannaCry, right? We've seen that, read those articles. What did WannaCry target? Old Windows, right? Well, older than that even. It was XPs. There was Windows NT. All kinds of ancient crap like coal-fired Windows versions that were still running out there where they've got a stoker attached to that server and shoveling coal in to keep it going. But yeah, I mean, so stuff like that. Hackers love that stuff, right? Because one of the main targets of hackers is always going to be outdated, unpatched operating systems. And there's a lot of those in corporate, and a lot of them are Windows. It's not really Microsoft's fault you didn't patch your systems, but it could be. They could have designed it better in the first place. You have any other operating?
Just, always keeping up with the patching, always keeping up with the updates. Doug and I have worked in our world of travel. We've seen anything from slot machines that are running on still Windows versions of NT, all the way to ATMs. And so every time we see those, we take pictures of them and send them out to our students to say, see, this is what not to do. All right? You don't want your ATM running on Windows NT.
The whole airport in Prague, I was sitting in an airport in Prague 2 weeks ago, and all the terminals shut down, and it was like, Microsoft is rebooting your system. And it was like all of them went, and then they all hung up, and they had, a message like, click here, and everybody's like, when's my flight? And in a wide variety of languages. So how do you get there? I mean, obviously one of the ways is just practical. I mean, that's the way a lot of us did it. I mean, there was no such thing as I have computer science degrees, but there was no, there were no programs and this stuff. It's just by doing it. And lying a lot. So, when people call me and they say, Doug, you know anything about pen testing Windows NT? I do. Yeah. And then you better figure it out, right? So you run home and you order the manual and you sit down and you start studying and you build your own box and you try to make it work and oh no, and I better, I got 2 weeks to go in and do this job and whatever. So you have to do that. But there's a lot of other routes that you can follow, and I know some of you know these things. What about certifications? Anybody have certifications? Yeah, whole bunches of people. So I certainly do. Certifications are all over the place in terms of value. There are good certs that are incredibly valuable, like CCNA is one that I think is valuable. Cisco calls it a $70,000 a year cert, and I know some of you probably make a lot more money than that, but to Cisco that sounds like a lot of money. For a lot of college students, it sounds like a lot of money. To college professors, it sounds like a lot of money. But there are other certs I don't find so valuable. And how do you make this decision? I'm not going to name any. I'm not going to act like Paul. Paul would come out and go, this one and that one. I don't care. Bring it on. I care. I hate litigation. Unless I'm getting paid to do it. How about, I tell people, look at job ads. Go on monster.com and look at the jobs you think you want and see what certs they require. Because that will be what you put on your resume to say, I'm the person that you want for this pen testing job. And if it says CEH, and you say, oh, Doug, I hate that certification. I don't like it. But the jobs all say CEH. What should you get? Just suck it up. I used to teach CISSP for intense school. And that's one of the most hated and it's also valuable certifications. I mean, I can criticize it all day long, but, guess what? I can put that on my resume and people really like it a lot. And I go look at jobs at like mid-management, mid-career jobs in IT, and guess what they all say? CISSP desired or even required. And we used to have people in class who were completely panicked because guess what? Their job required them to have this exam. And they would always come to me and they would go, this is outrageous. I work for the Department of X and they're requiring me to get this ridiculous certification. And I'm like, yeah, kind of like lawyers have to pass the bar, that kind of thing. And they're like, well, it's just so hard. It just seems like a crock. And I'm like, yeah, that's because it's hard what you're supposed to be doing. But you know, and they're like, well, that just doesn't seem fair at all. I'm like, I know. That's why if you go down to the corner, there's a guy selling neurosurgery degrees, I think, for like $7. You can just pick one up on your way out. But I mean, CISSP is one that a lot of mid-career people pursue. But there's a lot of entry-level certs, and I don't like some of them because when I look at them, they seem kind of dinky to me. But then I look at the job listings and I say, oh, well, yeah, that would be a good idea because every single one of these says that. So go out and look at what you want. So don't just rely on me to tell you what you should do because it really is about which jobs do you want when you look at Monster.com or you look at Dice.com or whatever you're looking at, and you say, I want that job right there. And even if that job is like, you know, maybe not totally in your grasp right now because you're a high school student or you're a college student or whatever, think about, okay, 3 years from now, how do I get that job? Can I put that cert on my resume? Can I put that experience on my resume? Because at this point in the industry, you may be able to. So you can certainly go out there and do that. How about college? You know what, I'm going to cover this up. Okay. Yeah, I prefer like sort of like underwater dry weaving. It's much more useful, but it's a tougher skill, and the equipment costs. God, I mean, this gentleman has a point. Is the door closed? Oh, this is being recorded. I can't say any of the rest of this. Sorry. Turn that off. It's going to be like, no, I'm just kidding. It's like Nixon, so that part of the tape will be missing. Like, where'd those 12 minutes go? Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, one of the questions I get asked a lot at university is ROI, which is return on investment. Now, in cybersecurity, so a degree in cybersecurity, which we're producing, and I'm a sales pitch you, I don't care. I got this on my shirt. In cybersecurity, we're trying to produce, and most of the schools are trying to produce practical people that can immediately fill jobs. So if you're smart and you're doing this kind of stuff, your programs are derivative of what the industry wants. So we go out and meet with the industry people, like Paul Asadorian's on my board. So I'm not going to make a curriculum change unless Paul and Larry Pesci and those guys are actually in on it. I go to my employers, and so I go to Dell SecureWorks and I go to Raytheon and I say, what do you want? What do you want these guys to know? Because I want you to get hired, right? And so we try to put that in the package in the cybersecurity realm. So if you're looking at college, what I want to tell you to do, so my advice is, if the program is underwater basket weaving and the ability to speak Finnish, and those are things you want and are willing to pay for, hells yeah. I'd love to be able to speak Finnish. Wouldn't it be cool? I probably can't get a job doing it, but it sure would be cool, especially if I could speak Finnish and weave underwater baskets or whatever that is. But if you look at that curriculum and you say, are these the skills I need to get the job I want? And you can go back to that job listing and you say, am I learning Python? Am I learning Linux? Am I learning C++ and networking? Those are the things you need to get those jobs. And if you're learning those things, then maybe that investment's not such an encumbrance of the rest of your life. It may be something that you can pay off. It may be something that's worth you doing, because I will tell you, and so this is my advice from experience about college, if you do get out without a degree, you will probably at some point be sorry, because you won't be able to be promoted. Like my brother ran into that. And, you know, suddenly there's a tick box that says college degree. And yeah, it's fine for a while, but then you're going to run into a problem. So I have a solution for that, though. So you don't want that. Go to community college. They have great programs. But again, research the program. If you're taking Latin and underwater basket weaving at the community college, it's probably just as worthless as if you were taking it at Harvard. But go to community college and get an associate's degree. Do that. Get a job. because right now the market's super crazy hot, and you can get employed, get a job with somebody who'll pay for you to go to school, and then go to school and finish your degree programs. SANS, Roger Williams, there's all kinds of organizations that will help you get that bachelor's degree so you can finish not so encumbered. Or you can join the Army. They're outside. I mean, and she's out there right now. Like, she's out there like going, she was sizing you guys up. I mean, she was looking at my students. She's like, those two look healthy. And she's like, are they pretty healthy? I was like, oh yeah, they're like full of blood, you know, and they're ready. And she was like, oh, I could see them. You know, we need some guys, you know. Like, you first.
And the field of education now is slowly starting to change. And where we work at Russ, it's pretty interesting that we get to sort of be the leader in that because we are a small private college. And so we get to do things that larger state universities and colleges don't get to do. Like, for instance, explore this idea of competency-based education, which if you go back to the slide, those three things were what? Certs, right? Certifications, college, okay, and then experience. This new CBE model, competency-based education, combines all of these things into this idea of college. Because if you look at college now, the way it should be is, I don't want to encumber $120,000 worth of student debt, and then just to find out that I can only get a $50,000 job. So this new model, or these new models, there's a couple of them, take into account existing experience, okay, or past experience, in addition to certifications. And these things, right, these top two things, start substituting for coursework. Because why should you take a course in firewalls and defense if you are, let's say, an engineer, a firewall engineer? I think that you might have that covered, don't you? I would hope so. So we can start to pick apart, instead of by course, you're looking at by competency. So now, all of a sudden, that degree doesn't seem to be so difficult anymore, or costly, right? And these models, a lot of these models that we're investigating, one of which we're starting this fall, is an all-you-can-eat buffet for education. So for something like, let's say, $3,000, you get a six-month subscription to our university to take as many competencies as you want. You could finish your degree in 6 months if you were that motivated. So for $3,000, you get a university degree, you know, assuming that you have that time and the ability to finish all the work, and that's that. So this is where the landscape is starting to change in your favor, all of your favor. So it's kind of cool.
Well, so I didn't know about that. So they don't tell me these things. They just tell me go in there and teach networking, Doug. Come on. So I like doing that because I don't want to get involved in all that complicated stuff. I like those, you know, packets and. Some of the jobs we place people in, so again, I don't want this to totally be a sales pitch, but some of the jobs we place people in are SOC jobs. So SOC jobs are basically firewall administration and network monitoring. So if you wanted to get into those kind of jobs, again, networking, programming, I mean, all these skills we said basically lead you to these jobs. And because that's what you're doing there. And the SOC is monitoring malware, monitoring packets on a network. So you need those pieces of skills. You need the scripting skills so you can write your own scripts and be valuable. You need to be able to look at packets and tell what's going on. And the more of those skills you bring to the table, the more effective you are at any of those kind of jobs. So you can look at that and you become more valuable and you get a lot of quick upward mobility, which so some people want and some people don't. Some people love to stay there and just I monitor my networks and that's all I ever want to do and I'm going to stay right here till I die. And other people are like, I want to get promoted and all those kind of things, which usually you regret. Because I was a programmer, and then they were like, would you like to be the systems analyst? And it's like, yes, because I get a promotion. And then like 2 days later, I was like, why did I do this? I was this happy programmer. I was down there. I had my code. I was working on it. And now I'm like up here. And people from the marketing department are calling me. And then I got sent to anger management and all that. Yeah. Which really did make me a lot angrier. I gave this guy the finger in the elevator because he came up and he said, did you see those changes to the priority structure I made in the programming model? And I was like, yes, you're now number one. And then I got, next day it's like, go to anger management. You obviously have issues. And I was like, no, if I had a machete in the elevator, then I would have issues. It was like, this was just telling the guy what I thought of him. Pen testers, a lot of people want to do that. That's one of those sexy sounding jobs. Pretty hard. But a lot of pen testing teams are developed, like, all the Black Hills and Guardians and all these Dell SecureWorks and all these companies have pen testing teams. A lot of companies now have, I know FM Global's developing pen testing teams. A lot of the banks have pen testing teams. And those are made up of a lot of different people. So they're literally like a team. Now, I used to do some stuff by myself, but I used to do physical pen tests, so I knew how to pick locks. I knew how to open windows. Although my preferred lockpick method is called Mr. Wrecking Bar. I'm like, yeah, while James Bond is still down there in his tuxedo trying to open that filing cabinet, I went, it's open. And see you, Mr. Bond. And plus I could hit him with while he's focusing on lock picking, I could hit him with the wrecking bar. So it's a multi-purpose tool. But a lot of people want to get into pen testing. So scripting again. So Python, Ruby, any of these kind of scripting languages are critical. The more you understand about C and other programming languages of development, the better pen tester you're going to be. The more you understand about operating systems and things like that, Wi-Fi, all that stuff comes into pen test. Now, typically they build a team of people who all have different skills. So you've got networking people and programming people and analytic type people. Incident responders, these are people that go out and try to stop the bleeding. That's probably the most challenging one, because that's the one where you show up and you've been hacked or you are still being hacked. Everyone's running around screaming, including the CEO. Your cell phone is ringing, and they're going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Now they're into this system, and you're like, I'm trying to stop it, but I'm on the phone with you. So if you just stop calling me, I'll tell you when it stopped. It's like grabbing the doctors away from the table in surgery going, tell me how it's doing. And it's like, well, he's bleeding while you're holding me here. So, But I could stop and explain if you'd like. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Okay, well, see, this part here, the lower respiratory tract seems to be involved. That's where all the blood is squirting out of. So let me how much do you know about the aorta? Like, look, let me just explain a little bit about how that works. I mean, you can't believe these people do this, but they do. And like, my email is still not working. I know that, yeah. I'm going to send out an email to you when it's working again, like I told you yesterday. You'll get that email that says, your email is now working. And until you get that email, your email will not be working. Well, when will it be working? I'm not sure, but as soon as I get off this call, I'll start working on it again. You have to keep that calm voice. That sounds like you might kill them. That's sort of what I shoot for. It's just kind of that, Hannibal Lecter kind of like, it will be working very soon, Agent Starling. And then forensics. Those are the people going after the fact, so they clean up. And so you're going to come in after the incident, and they're going to come in and try to document, maybe decide whether legal action is necessary, whether law enforcement needs to get involved or whatnot. And as more states have evolved cyber disruption teams, and ours is now called the Joint Cyber Task Force because politicians got involved, as all that stuff came about, we see more of this kind of involvement where they're crossing over. So you've got corporate talking with law enforcement saying, can we prosecute this? Is it worth looking at? And we didn't used to see that because people like me were sitting and like you too, were sitting in the center, and you would never dream of calling the state police, to ask them about this. It was just not even conceivable. I mean, I can't even imagine what would have been said if I went upstairs to legal and went, I was thinking of calling the state police. It would have been like, what, to report your own death? Because they just couldn't, imagine. But with these cyber disruption teams and things, we've started developing relationships. So I know now I can call Captain Alfred and say, John, what do you think about this? And John's not going to show up with a van load of SWAT guys and unload them. He's just going to go, yeah, you're never going to get a case out of that. So just go ahead and do whatever you need to do. Or he'll go, yeah, that's criminal. Because I did one earlier this year where we got called in as civilians on a case, and I said, would it be okay if I bring the guy from the state police? And they were like, oh, I don't know about that. And I was like, well, come on, it's the guy from Joint Cyber Task Force. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know him. So he came with me. And about halfway through that meeting, he said, this is really criminal, and we should really prosecute these people for this. And we knew who the people were. So they were able to actually prosecute the people for this activity, which I can't tell you about. Go. Oh, 5 minutes. Stop. I like this. I mean, this is what it's all about, really. I mean, to wrap it up. I mean, at the end of this, I didn't learn any of this stuff in school. And you'll be saying that too one day. Because you'll be saying, oh, remember when I took Doug's networking class way back when? Man, we had it tough in those days. And, you know, these kids today using this newfangled Z network protocol. God, what a bunch of idiots. But, I mean, that means you have to keep doing it. And the one thing about this field that I will tell you is unlike some things where you can kind of say, I learned it, I got this piece of paper, I go sit in a cubicle for the next 30 years. This is not like that. You have to like this stuff. You have to enjoy it. Because everybody you'll see at this conference that are in this industry that you listen to Security Weekly. Those guys aren't sitting there going, I'm the most miserable person on the face of the earth. I haven't learned anything new in, 19 years. Those are people that, like, before the show started, were sitting in their office going, whoa, what's this? And that's the people that are successful in this field, because none of this existed when I went to school. Most of it didn't even conceptually exist other than, like, there was some documentation at DARPA. And, C++ kind of existed, but it was just a spec. They didn't use it anywhere. And you have to keep doing it. You have to keep coming to these things and listening to boring people like me. You have to keep studying. You have to keep training and getting certificates and keeping your certs up. And you have to learn new stuff. And that may mean you have to intern when you're 30 years old, because you may need to, because something new came along and you've been working so heavily focused on Java. And you really need to learn Python and Ruby because that's where it's going or whatever. And it's time to get out there. And then that's what this kind of stuff does for you. That's what shows like Security Weekly can do for you by letting you see things that are going on or what people are talking about and maybe make you feel inadequate, which is what I like about it, which sounds awful, but it's actually a good idea. Because, you sit there and I go and I watch Paul and Larry and Jack and all those guys talk about this stuff and I go, wow, I'm really pathetic. I need to start studying. I got to go home and build something today, because Paul makes me feel like that all the time. And, it's like, he's just like, oh, look, I figured out Docker. It only took like 3 days with no sleep. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm like, man, I wish I'd figured out Docker. Like I watched a movie. But go to school. Find a place that works for you. Take classes, come to conferences and go to sessions, or just break it. Some of the best people I ever knew were gamers, and you know why they were good? Because gamers always had this problem. Their computer was always 2 steps behind the software, right? People are like, I really want to play Halo 19, The Coming Storm. I used to get these calls all the time, like, yeah. It was professors and stuff, too. They're like, yeah, I really want to play, like Halo 19, The Coming Storm. And my computer's like 6 years old. And I was like, yeah, it's not going to work. Well, what should I do? Well, like, okay, buy a new computer that's got like 128 gigs of RAM and 4 processors and like 4 video cards, and man, it'll rock. And, and every now and then I get a rich guy who would do that. The rich guy would show up and go, okay, how many monitors do I need? I'm like, I don't know. How about 8? Yeah, we could do that. It's like, this machine's going to cost like $12,700 and the monitor's going to be another $5,000. Like, yeah, okay. I was like, is that, you want me to write a check? And I'm like, yeah. And listen to this. I did this one time and it worked. I said, it'd be helpful if we built a prototype first. And he was like, okay, do that. So I built I got to keep the prototype. This guy spent $25,000 so he could play a video game. But usually the people went, oh, yeah, I don't have any money. And so that's when they start doing things like, I bet if I took the cooling unit out of this bar refrigerator and attached it to my CPU, I could overclock my CPU so high that it's glowing red hot, but the bar refrigerator will keep it cool. And that worked for like 9 hours, and then the motherboard melted. Can you repair this? Well, it looks like a charcoal briquette, but probably not. And you saw people doing this kind of stuff all the time. So that, unfortunately, all the time that we have. Feel free to come by Security Weekly booth, which is right down there, the Roger Williams booth, which is right across the aisle from it, or just drop us all a line if you'd like to chat. You know me, I never shut up, as Russ well knows. And or tune into any of our shows and see what's going on, and drop us a line on Facebook or Twitter or any of those kind of places. Oh, I know it's there. Yeah, I just hadn't got around to it yet. Oh, I had a slide. Oh my God. Yeah. See, I had all this stuff. I know we're out of time. They're waving at me and they're bringing in the dogs and all that kind of stuff. That's my Twitter. That's my email. If you want to follow me or you want to email me, and I love to talk to people. So if you have questions or comments or stuff you want to see on the show, if you say, "Hey, Doug, could you explain what Python is on the show?" That'd be great. I'd be happy to do it. And we're always looking for new ideas. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Come by, get interviewed, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.